Trustee Harold Mills,
Here.
Trustee Belvin Perry,
Here.
Trustee Craig Reed. Trustee Reed? Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item that we have is a consent items, which include all of the meeting minutes for February 20th, 2017 and March 7th. Trust that you've all had an opportunity to read those, and if that is the case, I will entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second that the consent items will be approved as presented. All in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving into our action items, the first of which is the election of vice chair. I will share with the group that we have already had some great movement with Trustee Mills serving and being very diligent on the budget side, so I would ask for a nominee or a nomination.
I nominate Trustee Mills.
I second.
I second.
Not so quick.
I move the
Okay.
nomination be closed on that name.
Absolutely, okay, the nominations are closed. We have one individual that's presented. All in favor of moving forward, actually not all in favor. Yes, we have. You moved it, got the second on it. So yes, all in favor of accepting Trustee Mills as that vice chair, acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
There you go, 2 appointments in one day.
First was spoken.
You are indeed lucky, I tell you. We have an aggressive agenda, so let's jump into it. Approval of budget, and that for interim VP4, it's going to walk us through it. There are 2 items. There's preliminary budget 2017, 2018, and then our strategic plan budget.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Please see the 2017-18 preliminary operating budget summary Schedule 1 for your approval. The Schedule 1 form is required by the Board of Governors, and it is a summary of the budgets for E&G, C&G, auxiliaries, student activities, student financial aid, concessions, athletics, and tech fee.
It's in here.
The next slide is a snapshot of the operating budget and the budget for the strategic plan. Column 1, which totals 100 and...
Slow down.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. What, do you want
Slow
to
down, slow down.
approve it at the end?
You're just trying to
Yeah.
that's all.
I didn't know if you were going to approve it at the end.
Yeah, no, what we're looking to do is try and see either a larger view there or just time to just find it in our hard copy on the packet.
Sure. In the packet, it is on, the first slide is page 3, and that is Schedule 1. What's on the screen is page 5.
Everybody has it?
I think so.
I think there's still,
So Schedule 1 is what I was referring to in my opening remarks, and that is actually the form that has to be approved by the Board of Governors. It is on page 3.
okay, and so the page 3, and that's, she's referring to the preliminary budget. So if you could walk us through that, any trends, comments on that, so that then board, if there are questions before we dive into the strategic plan.
Okay, right. So this is our Schedule 1. It's required by the Board of Governors. It's a summary of all of the different funds within the university. You have E&G, you have contracts and grants, auxiliaries, student activities, student financial aid, concessions, athletics, tech fee. And so this is just a summary of the revenue and expenditures of the budget. And this is what is used to provide us with our budget allocation for 17-18. So this is the actual form that's required by the Board of Governors. This is what has to be submitted.
A couple of highlights, notables anyway. One of them is last year, we received $11.5 million in performance funding. Mm-hmm. We're not expecting anything for next year, so that number goes from 11.5, down, obviously, to there's some other funds that we're getting,
Mm-hmm.
but to $1 million in this particular budget.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's also interesting here is that last year we did our budget based off of 9,000 students from an enrollment perspective.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're doing the budget off of 9,500. And so effectively there's a wash between the 11.5 that we lose from performance funding and basically $12 million in terms of increase in tuition enrollment from there, tuition and fees, okay? Those are a couple of the key sort of revenue highlights from that perspective. And so the budget basically goes from $165 million for 16-17 to $171 million for 17-18. That's what you're looking at.
Okay.
Any other key notables, Wanda, that we want to just highlight?
No, well, as far as fund balance, there were two entities that used fund balance, and that includes auxiliaries and student activities, but they are allowed to use their fund balance. Other than that, then everything else looks fine.
Okay, are there questions or comments tied to, yes, this is Schedule 1 that has to be submitted, but Trustee Mills has stated some of the key points that I wanted to have recognized and shared with this group, that what are we building the budget on? What are we estimating? So that is the 9,500. And we anticipate, as I understand it, with the applications continuing to grow, that, you know, the number may be larger, but at a minimum, what we're looking at is that 9,500.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say we appreciate the briefings from Dr. Ford and her staff. She had all the right people in the room, so we could ask whatever questions that we wanted to do, and I sincerely appreciate that. Also, thanks to Linda for rearranging everyone else's schedule so I could participate, including one time she had me meeting with, was it Saturday night with Dr. Eddington at 7 o'clock. So I really appreciate all the hard work our staff is doing to accommodate us on the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, and I think certainly I would add to that, because each of the meetings, there is a group to make sure that if there are questions, that they get answered, so thank you for that. I'd like to take the items up one at a time, so if there are not any questions or comments tied to Schedule 1 in a document that we'll be submitting to BOG, please, I'd like to entertain a motion tied to the 2017-2018 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so it's been properly motioned and second, the acceptance of the preliminary 2017-2018 budget. All in favor, please acknowledge with aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. The strategic plan budget, if it can come out, right?
Yes. Okay, no problem. And actually, Trustee Mills highlighted most of what I wanted to cover. But this slide, which is slide 5, is a snapshot of the operating budget and the strategic planning budget. Column 1 shows a total of $170 million. This is the amount that was allocated by the Board of Governors to the university for fiscal year 17-18. The student fee portion is based on an enrollment of 12,000 students. But as you stated, we are basing our budget based on 9,500 students, even though we're hoping to reach closer to 10,000. The $9.6 million that you see is the budget allocation that comprises of the difference in allocation for a student fee budget of $12,000 and 9,500. So this portion of the budget is considered as unallocated budget authority. So the difference between the total allocation of $170 million, again, is, the $170 million and the unallocated amount of $9.6 million is $161 million, which is what we're considered as our budget for 17-18. Now, last year, the budget allocation was $163,980,000. The difference in the allocation for fiscal year 16-17 and 17-18 is $2.8 million. This difference has been addressed via residual salary dollars and unfilled positions. The process was strategic and was conducted with academic affairs to ensure that departments that are preparing for specialized accreditation or they're addressing licensure passage rate concerns were not negatively impacted. Okay, although there are funds within the operating budget that support the strategic plan, there was also a need to support specific line items within the budget for the plan. So if approved, the legislature has awarded additional funds in the amount of $1 million for distance learning, $1.7 million for world-class faculty and scholars, and $1.9 million to support our graduate programs in the areas of law and SBI. And we're also going to use some of the funds to support our pharmacy program. So since the criteria for these initiatives tied to the strategic plan, these funds have been earmarked to support the plan. In addition, Title III programs, which is grant funding totaling approximately $12 million, will also be used to support the plan. This funding is received annually from the U.S. Department of Education, and the expected outcomes associated with the award should be directly linked to the university's strategic priorities. Title III funding is received in 5-year increments, which provides a sustainable source of funding for the remaining 4 years of the plan. Madam Chair, this concludes our presentation of this item.
Thank you, and I think the only thing I'd add before opening up for other questions of the board members is just recognizing that we do have the inclusion of some one-time funds in here when we're talking about the salary lapse. So the conversations surrounding the strategic planning and the sources of fundings, as I understand it with Dr. Eddington and Interim VP Ford, we will start that planning for year 2 during the course of the summer, so that we're well ahead of the process of making sure that our strategies that we've laid out and the plan itself can be supported and that we are thinking about it in advance.
Absolutely.
Are there questions related to the, absolutely, Trustee Mills?
I didn't have any questions.
Okay.
I just had a comment.
Okay, go
I
ahead,
didn't know
come
if
on.
you're ready. You want to take questions? Huh?
Okay, are there questions?
The question I had was in the context of funding for the strategic plan, but it was explained to me by Dr. Ford and how we were able to allocate funding for those 3 areas. That I think was 3 areas you told me where we were putting resources available to kick off the strategic plan.
Yeah, so we have 3 additional pots of money, so to speak, from the legislature for this year. $1 million is to support our distance learning program, 1.7 faculty recruitment, and 1.9 to support our graduate programs in law, business, and we're going to use some of it to support pharmacy. So since the criteria tied to these funds directly tied to initiatives in the strategic plan, we're going to use those funds to help support the plan.
I think that's going to be very helpful to us, particularly when you consider what we're trying to do, both in law as well as in our other professional programs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Comments and/or questions?
So my comment is, and VP Ford and I have had discussions about this for sure, but I would just, again, encourage the staff to continue to push on where to find money out of the operations. If you think about this $1.7 million or the $1 million or the $1.9 million, what would we do if we didn't get that, right, is the question for me, right? So would we be able to actually execute our strategic plan without that particular money? And the reality of it is that I think if we operate within that mentality as a general rule, then I think we can find money within the enterprise itself to actually be self-sufficient, candidly, which I think should be our goal at the end of the day. So when you add the 1.7 and the 1.9, the $1 million for distance learning, the $4 million in unfunded scholarships, those are all things that we have to continue to make very difficult decisions and really push ourselves as a leadership team to find that money within ourselves for sustainability, okay? Because we're still in a place where we're not in a healthy place financially, effectively, right? So that's where we have to make those decisions, okay?
Okay, other comments? If not, then a motion to,
Ms. Chairman, Trustee Moore,
you're recognized, yes.
thank you. And Dr. Ford and her staff also spoke to me, and I want to address that 1.7 for world-class faculty. And I think it's important, because this is a broadcast, that everyone understands exactly what that funding will be used for. Let's make sure that's clear, because sometimes employees or non-employees hear that, and there is a different interpretation as to how that money will be spent. So could we just get a breakdown of that so that our listening audience, as well as those who may pass on information to others, and journalists, we call that the 2-step flow from media theory. So could we explain that?
Sure. So I have the criteria, and it is to support state universities to recruit and retain exemplary faculty and research scholars. It is the intent of the legislature to elevate the national competitiveness of Florida state universities through faculty and scholar recruitment and retention. So the investments will be in retention, recruitment, and recognition efforts. Activities and investments may be made, but are not limited to, investments in research-centric cluster hires, faculty research and research commercialization efforts, instructional and research infrastructure, undergraduate student participation in research, professional development, awards for outstanding performance, and postdoctoral fellowships. So that is the specific criteria. And we have to report that we expended the funds in this manner.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ford.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we'll entertain a motion tied to the strategic plan budget and how we have in our first year in alignment with the plan that we presented.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and second. Those in favor of approving the strategic plan budget as presented, acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The next item is approval of amendments to Regulation 3.017, and that's interim VP Ford as well.
Thanks, Chair Moore. An amendment is needed to increase the repeat course fee from $177.57 to $181.12, which represents an increase of $3.55 as mandated by the Board of Governors. Madam Chair, this completes our presentation of this action item.
Madam Chair, I think this is so very important because, as you know, the metric chosen by the Board of Governors has to do with excess hours.
Right.
And that's kind of a penalty provision for us. So I think this will let folks know that we're not only let the Board of Governors know we're taking this serious, but also let our customers know that, hey, there's a reason for this. And that reason for this is that it has a deleterious and negative impact on the funding for the university, but more importantly, it slows down the process for our students moving forward and progressing either to graduate school or the military or to employment. So this is very, very important. I think this is something that we really need to let the Board of Governors know that, look, we didn't just listen to you, we actually acted upon this, and it ties directly into that metric number 10, I guess. Well, one of the metrics, the one that's chosen by the Board of Governors that has to do with the excess hours.
Excess hours.
Number nine.
Number
Thanks,
nine.
Dr. We picked number 10. Yeah, number 10 is hours for research.
We don't want to mess that up then. So again, this is a mandate by way of the BOG. Thank you for your comments, Trustee Carter. Is there a motion to accept it as presented?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second, the approval of the amendment to Regulation 3.017. All in favor, acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Madam Chair, as a follow-up to what Trustee Carter said, and for Ms. Ford, Dr. Ford, is this for one repeat or multiple repeats?
It's more than twice.
Okay, so everybody, again, in our listening audience and our customers will know, and this is really important because I hear comments from our customers a lot regarding the university doing this and feeling like it's penalizing them, so this is important that they do understand this.
Yeah, it's more of a penalty that the Board of Governors had to put across system-wide.
Yes.
And this is just our way to letting our customers know how important it is to us and also for the system.
Absolutely. I believe that I heard every voice on that, but just for the sake of making sure, is there any opposition to it? Okay, motion carries, then we'll move that forward. The next item is the Capital Improvement Program, and that's AVP Kapilashwari.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Good morning, trustees.
Good morning.
President Robinson, and dear colleagues. So this is that time of the year where we come back and seek your approval for the Capital Improvement Program. Every year, the Board of Governors provide the legislature with a recommended budget for additional academic support facilities that are needed for the state universities in the upcoming 5-year period. In support of this effort, the BOG requires each university to submit a fixed capital outlay, legislative budget request, and an updated 5-year capital improvement plan, also called as CIP. CIP is a rolling 5-year outlook for the PICO, Public Education Capital Outlay eligible projects for our education and general use spaces. CIP is prepared jointly with academic affairs and selective campus-wide stakeholder engagement. The CIP process begins every year in early spring semester with engagement with our provost office and with the establishment of the CIP development team. The CIP development team is tasked to narrow down priority PICO-eligible projects while ensuring selected projects' alignment with the university's strategic plan and priorities. This year, after discussing the CIP development with Provost Wright and Associate Provost Dr. Boston, the following areas were recommended by them to assist with the CIP development. We requested participation from the following: College of Social Sciences, Arts and Humanities, Army ROTC, School of Architecture, College of Science and Technology, College of Education, Pharmacy, Agriculture and Food Sciences, Instructional Technology and Distance Learning, Information Technology Services, Plant Operation and Maintenance, Facilities, Student Affairs, Strategic Planning Team, and the Office of General Counsel. This team discussed and developed the draft CIP priority list for consideration. We truly appreciate all their help. As we discussed in our last meeting, the CIP list is trying to incorporate the enrollment projections from a strategic plan. The priorities from the strategic plan of increasing the projects to address the deferred maintenance and infrastructure, availability of STEM and/or research spaces, etc. Overall, there are several projects that are focused on repurpose, remodel, and renovation, as opposed to merely new construction. The draft CIP was shared with Provost Office, CFO and Vice President of Finance and Administration, and the President's senior leadership team. This list was also vetted through our strategic planning team to ensure the alignment of the top CIP projects with the goals and priorities established in the strategic plan. The cost estimates were developed for each of these projects using the Board of Governors' latest cost rate sheets. Now, the one on your screen you see is the prioritized list of our 15 CIP projects on PICO list. Although we have several very important projects on this list, realistically speaking, we'll be fortunate if we get the requested funding for at least the top 3 projects on the list. These projects align very well with our campus strategic priorities and with the priorities of the Board of Governors. Priority 1 in our strategic plan talks about student experience. As expected, our highest priority project will remain the creation of one-stop shop for student-related services, and/or the CAS building, the Center for Access and Student Success building. As most of you know, this is an active project, and we intend to share the status and more details for CAS later in our presentation. Acknowledging the projected growth in our enrollment figures, addition of new campus buildings, and the growing deferred maintenance and infrastructure needs, the second project on our list will focus on the nuts and bolts of our facilities operation, that is infrastructure and central plant improvements, which includes boilers, chillers, utility distribution, etc. Although this is not a single building or college program related project, it does help the entire campus. I've had the pleasure to participate in faculty senate meetings where technology has been discussed. I have taken my notes and heard it very clearly. So the next project is one that is near and dear to several of us and our constituents, notably our students and faculty. I truly appreciate Trustee Gribble and Faculty Senate assistance on giving this project the due importance and priority. This project is related to technology in classrooms and will focus on both the upgrades necessary to our existing technology in classrooms and also provision of new technology in classroom where one doesn't exist yet. Some of our student interns from SBI and architecture helped us survey our classroom inventory. This was later shared with Registrar's Office, Instructional Technology Team, and the ITS team. Currently, ITS team is also working closely with a smaller Faculty Senate subgroup in prioritizing our needs in various classroom spaces. Just as a note, distance learning and classroom technology has often been topic of discussion at the Board of Governors meeting, and as well we heard in the Academic and Student Affairs Committee this morning as well. Now, those were our top 3 projects. Some of our other projects on the list will focus on research spaces on campus, along with other programmatic needs identified through our academic affairs team. Now, where do we go from here? After approval of the CIP by this board, our team will work very closely with the respective academic areas and finalize the CIP report, which will include project information, its alignment with our priorities, and the calculation on return on investment. This report will be reviewed and signed by our president and shared with the Board of Governors office. The deadline for submission this year is August 1st. Chair Moore, this completes our presentation on item 7, the capital improvement program.
Thank you very much. And again, the only thing that I'd point out here is, yes, it's a required process, but the work that has taken place within the university and making sure that there was a connection to the strategic plan and our priorities. So there was a reprioritization. If you were to have looked at the same document from last year, you'd see that it has changed to fall in alignment with all the other work that we're doing to move forward. Are there any questions or comments before a motion is made regarding this item?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Recognize.
this priority of these 15 items, is that correct? Is there knowing what's the proper terminology? I don't want to insult the members of the legislature, but the lack of funding for PICO in general,
Right.
is that those are priorities? Are these priorities also scheduled priorities?
Yes, yes, sir, that is correct. Yeah, so our number one priority, of course, we would want, if nothing else, we want the funding for CAS so that we can continue. But yes, those are prioritized as well.
Okay, so,
Doesn't mean there's any money there.
no.
Exactly, Trustee Lawrence, but we are hopeful and optimistic that money will follow, but at a minimum, you see that as our first priority is the one that they've already invested in, so we're hopeful that through our original investment, that they'll continue that investment to the point of completion.
So how-
Trust-
What's, just one final question.
Trustee Carter, yes.
I think we got some initial funding for the CAS building, we got that, but where does that leave us? What's the bottom line? How much more do we need to complete the project?
The total project cost right now as estimated, and of course, it's constantly getting refined as the design is progressing, but we are anticipating the project cost to be about 39 million or so. So far, we have received last 2 years about $12.5 million, and this year, although at one point it felt like we are not on the priority list A from the Board of Governors, but the legislature has approved $3.5 million for this year as well.
So, Madam Chair, if I may?
Absolutely.
follow up. So where does that leave us structurally with the project, for lack of a term?
Yes,
Where
so
are we?
we are going to continue still moving aggressively with the design and engagement with the construction manager, but now knowing that we don't have the funding for the whole construction at this stage, because the design right now, according to the schedule, would be completed late October, early November. That's when we'll be getting the guaranteed maximum price from the construction manager. But we will not have the money for getting them started with the whole thing. So the team is also working closely with the architect, the construction manager, to see, based on what funding we already have, what can we get accomplished. So we are trying to do the site package. We are trying to release early site packages so that we can start showing progress, start using the funds we already have.
You anticipated my next question, because that's so very important. I think that it shows the legislature we're
Right.
serious if we spend the money we got before we come back asking for more.
Absolutely,
That's right.
absolutely. Well, there are other comments.
Yeah,
Chair Lawson.
I just had a question, and I don't know if it belongs on this list or not, and I know we'll talk about it when we get to the P3, but dormitories are, or should be, a major priority for us, whether it be new or renovation. So even though it's going to be very difficult, very challenging to get any of that money from the legislature for dormitories, wouldn't it at least make sense to put it on our list?
If I
You
may.
recognize him.
Yes, Chair Lawson, absolutely. So for example, although the CIP program is for the PICO eligible projects and dormitories are considered auxiliary, but when we have the summary sheet, it includes not only all the PICO eligible projects, but also other sources of funding, which includes the public-private partnership, dormitories, parking garages, whatever you have. But those are all listed in our summary sheet. And in your package, you should have that copy.
But this is the summary sheet that goes before.
This is
the
summary
governor.
sheet for the PICO eligible projects only in our presentation. But in the package itself, you will have the full list of the other sources as well.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, you recognize.
So, Madam Chair, thank you. But I guess the question, and you should answer this definitively if you can, are dormitories PICO eligible? I guess that's the question.
No.
Right, okay, so that's why they're not here.
That's why they're not on this particular list,
But
okay.
they are on a broader list where the funding source is different than PICO. Okay.
That's the answer.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is the answer, so
Yeah.
thank you for that clarification. And I think, though, it would still help us to see just a priority list of facilities or infrastructure. I think this is good because it's PICO, but my question unfortunately wouldn't make your PICO list, but it would still make our high priority list, I would think.
If I may. Madam
Trustee
Chair.
Mills?
So first of all, I just want to acknowledge AVP Kaplashwari and the rest of the team. I didn't really know that they had 150 facilities they were working on as well. So while we think about technology and, in our strategic plan and how we move the organization forward, to your point, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of other items that we're trying to manage and balance. In fact, I had asked I had asked the team to kind of give me the same list of all the facilities as well as what their conditions were, et cetera. And as they kind of used an index to understand where repairs were, where they need to replace, where they're making really difficult decisions, whether to replace or repair. There's 170,000 square feet of space, I'm sorry, I take that back. There's 720,000 square feet of space that's in below average or poor condition, in fact, that we're trying to find money to try to repair or make decisions on whether to replace those facilities altogether. So I'm sure that you guys wouldn't mind sharing that full list with the entire board for you to peruse. It's a lot of fun reading.
I think it'd be good to see a complete, and I know this is PICO, right? So I understand that, but I think it'd be good to see a complete list of our priorities.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because I think as we are in our respective circles talking to people, whether they be elected officials or others, it'd be helpful to make sure that we continue to beat that drum with an organized voice around, in order for us to do the things we need. One of the things that, constantly comes to mind is we have to improve our housing footprint, to even achieve some of the things in the strategic plan. And I know it will hit on that in the P3, but I'd like just a short list of, hey, in the next 2 to 5 years, here are the things that the team has prioritized, whether PICO or not, that we think need to be done for us to move forward.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of tough decisions they're being faced with as it relates to that amount.
Trustee Washington?
I just have probably a philosophical question. I'm looking at this and it says 2018 to 2023, there are over $400 million that we're looking at right here in projects. How do we gauge our success knowing what our current funding sources are and what our actual tangible difficulties are? I mean, I'm really just having a hard time dealing with the numbers that are sitting there, the needs that are there, the fund, the space that's unusable or in poor conditions, and this says 2020. I mean, 5 years. How do we know that we're getting anywhere on this list?
You will not know until each year with the legislative session and the funding piece of it. So that's the interesting piece that they ask us to pull out the crystal ball to look at. And every institution throughout the state of Florida is doing that same crystal ball effect, because there is no way to determine whether we will hit any or all of these things, because it will depend on something out of our control, and that's the legislature. So I agree, it's a huge number, but it's one that we certainly want to be participatory and compile this list, because if lo and behold, there's dollars like this year where FAMU fared well in the sense compared to others, and we were able to retain all of our items, that we want to make sure that that list is out there. So I call it the wish list in effect, and the required wish list, because it does have to get submitted.
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
but I go back to,
Okay.
I'll yield to Trustee
I'll yield
Carter.
to the chairman.
But I just go back to, I do want to get that totality list, right? Because even in the current P3, do we have, and we're skipping ahead on the agenda, but do we have the right items prioritized in the right sequence?
Then what I'd offer then, just as chair, to interject on that, is that let's look at closing out this one.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, because we can't impact housing with this, so then let's close this out, so that for the sake of that, and then as we go into the other items, touch on what that cumulative list is, because there are some questions about the bigger picture of it's, with housing, and we want to make sure that that's also one of the retention pieces for our students who decide to make FAMU their home and destination. Trustee Carter, question related to
Oh, okay.
the capital
I was
improvement
on the
plan?
same wavelength as the
Okay.
chairman, so I'll defer.
Okay. Trustee Lawrence, question related to the capital improvement plan?
This is probably more philosophical as
Okay.
well, but I know we have a heck of a problem with athletic facilities. I also assume in this world that we would never go to the legislature with that. Is that correct?
Right, that is correct. That is
So
correct.
if we're
You would
going to
be
get it
assuming correct.
funded, we're going to get it funded.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so the PICO allowed funds, okay, question related to the capital improvement plan, trustee?
Yes,
Okay,
it is. And my question is, I recall trustee Mills' comment regarding 30 years of graduation rate problems. I'd like to know, in relationship to the CIP, how old are some of these issues? And I have a point. How old are some of these issues related to these PICO-eligible project requests?
So I guess the question is, how many of them have been on a list from previous times, and for what length of time, that are just repeat items?
Yes, several of the projects have been over here on the CIP list for at least last 2 years that I have been with the university, but I understand even before that they were on the list. Means we are shuffling the priority based on what the strategic plan is, what are the universities doing. And again, as you see that this year, for example, earlier in the year, we had a meeting with the Board of Governors when they shared a small little video with us from our governor. And it basically was addressing that instead of new facilities, as a system, we are overbuilt with the space. So maybe we need to focus on our existing buildings. So that's where we are talking about remodel and renovation and things like that have been added. But several of the projects, to answer your question, have been on the list for a long time.
Okay, and that goes to my point. When we had the Board of Governors here, and you may have been in the room, Trustee Moore, when Levine spoke to the faculty, Governor Levine, he actually admitted and apologized that we have not been funded historically, correctly, and fairly.
Right.
And I think when we think about that, and I'm trying to tie this back again to the graduation rate and the fact that we've got so much room to catch up, that a lot of these problems are historical problems and are not necessarily things that, as Trustee Moore in Washington indicated, that how are we going to even tackle this? So we're always kind of, for a lot of our issues, in the catch-up mode, and not necessarily just related to the management in previous years, but it's a really big picture. That's my point. Thank you, Trustee
You're
Mills.
absolutely welcome, and Trustee Perry.
To sort of piggyback off of what Trustee Grable said, how have we fared in years, say over the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, with the other universities in obtaining PICO dollars? And if there is a big discrepancy, we need to make the legislature know about that and the Board of Governors, because we may need to get some catch-up funding. You know, if everybody else has been drawing down a bunch of money, then sometime we need to let them know that,
Right.
because with the total amount there, as Trustee Washington said, we won't see the light of day unless we get some equity funding to make up for the transgressions of the past.
So we'll get that
Trustee
information.
Perry always has these great one-liners, so I'll go to Trustee Lawrence, and then Dr. Robinson, and then back to the staff if there is information available over the last 5 years related to PICO dollars received. Trustee Lawrence.
What Judge Perry said, I've been thinking about a good bit. We got something good this time, but it's not a stunning amount of money.
Right.
And I suspect we have been shortchanged over the year relative to what difference we make in this state. And I'd like to know what the past is as well. And, you know, I see what FSU got and didn't get, and University of Florida got and didn't get. We got the one thing we most wanted, but this wasn't all the pigeons have come home to roost this year, I promise you. We need to be pushy and shovey and loving.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings up, you know, and we're digressing a little bit, but it brings about a broader discussion. And the broader discussion is, can we prove that we've been funded unevenly in this space? Can we legitimately prove that? And then can we justify what we would do if we had some of the funds, and how would we improve things if we had some of the funds that we didn't get? So I think it brings about a broader discussion that we need to have and quantify, because I think that makes sense to go downtown and say, this is what I need. I think it's a broader discussion around the equity of how the funds have been allocated. And if we were somewhat made whole, or not even made whole, just funded at a more aggressive level, what then you would do with those things as it relates to improving the overall university performance. Because I think that's the conversation that's going to win, not here's what I didn't get and here's what I want. So I would ask, and I know Dr. Robinson had this conversation as recently as the other day, so I think that's a thought process. So I would just ask that, through Dr. Robinson and Provost Wright, that we start to look at this thing more broadly, because, the environment downtown is going to change with the new governor, right? And whomever campaigns for governor is going to need to make a statement around their position of FAMU.
Right.
So timing probably couldn't be better to begin to lay the foundation for that conversation.
Thank you, Chair Lawson. Just a comment before Dr. Robinson reaches in. And when we talk about catch-up funds, we also have to talk about catch-up effort, because how we're here related to CAS, just so that everybody has an awareness and a great memory on this, is that there are other institutions who receive funds after us and have stood up their buildings. And so we are catching up, and we're doing a good job with this team. We are. We have the groundbreaking tomorrow. But again, readiness and preparation and the ability to execute also matter. So it's not a sense of just holding on to funds, but are we able to carry out the tasks that we said we would carry out? So, Dr. Robinson.
The point has been made, so
Okay.
I can't add any more to the discussion.
Yes,
Madam
yes.
Chair, I think the chairman is right, is that if we can not so much try to make people feel guilty, but we can say, look, here's how we can put our performance metrics on steroids. We have to tie everything, all of these buildings, all of this process, like the CAS system, we tie that directly into our student performances.
Right.
So we tie those into the performance metrics, which the governor, the legislature, the board of governors said that's the most important thing to them. And I think we can make that argument, and we can make it a case. We can say, look, this is where we are with zero funding. Just imagine what we could do if we had 25% of the resources we really need. Maybe, Nicole, not necessarily $400 million. Give us $100 million and we can show you what we can do.
Absolutely.
And we can improve our performance metrics and have, and I think that it's right, the chairman is right, we probably need to have a more discussion on that, but the more that we can tie things into our performance metrics, the more we can show them that, hey, we're not asking you on a hope and a prayer. We're saying this is what the state of Florida said is important to the entire system.
Absolutely.
This is what the state of Florida said. We don't want any weak sisters in the system. That's not my term, that's somebody else. So how do we advance forward? This is how we advance forward. We're showing here, just on the PICO list alone, $400 million. Right. But just imagine if we only got 25% of that.
Right.
We can show you a 25% investment here will give us a 65% improvement across the board.
You're exactly right.
That's my math. I don't know how that works out, but somehow or another we have to tie it in.
No, I totally agree on that, and I think it does lend way to a longer conversation relative to the agenda today and the, y'all know I'm type A, relative to the agenda today and the approval of the CIP plan, I would entertain a motion. Yes.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So it's been properly motioned and seconded the approval of the CIP plan. All please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposition, motion carries. Very good. Okay, Palmetto Street easement. And that will be AVP Kaplan-Soiree again.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Palmetto Street easement. As some of you may be aware, the city of Tallahassee is actively working on several projects on the south side. One such project is the Magnolia Street project. This project included infrastructure improvement and trails along the Magnolia Street east of Monroe. Now you may know Magnolia Street becomes our Palmetto Street on the west side of South Adams. Palmetto Street has private residential area on its north side and our campus on the south side. Currently, we do not have any sidewalk along this section of Palmetto. On March 22nd, 2017, the City of Tallahassee Commission passed this resolution for the proposed Palmetto Street sidewalk easement. The City of Tallahassee requires an easement to allow for construction, operation, and maintenance of sidewalk facilities located on property owned by the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund, or TIITF, along Palmetto Street. Having this sidewalk will be in the best interest of the citizens of Tallahassee and especially the residents of the Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University. Please see existing pictures on the screen right now. That's of the Palmetto Street as it stands right now, where we do not have the sidewalks. Yeah, the properties are more particularly described in Exhibit A of the Resolution 17R10. It extends from the Broad Street on the west side towards MLK to South Adams on the east side. In conclusion, the FAMU, Office of General Counsel, and the facilities team recommends this board consent to easement in favor of City of Tallahassee as set forth in the Resolution 17R10. And just to kind of reiterate, this is going to be completely financed by the city. Madam Chair, this completes our presentation for Agenda Item 8, Palmetto Street easement.
Thank you. You stole my thunder. I was absolutely going to say this is not something that we would have to be responsible for monetarily. So if there are questions or comments, if not, then a motion.
That means we get the sidewalks. The city's going to put in sidewalks for us.
Absolutely. That's it. That's what it means. Yes. Okay, this is an action item, so.
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second, the approval of the Palmetto Street easement. All those in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposition, motion carries. Now we're shifting into our information items, the first of which is project updates, and AVP Kaplashwari, if you'll move us through those. CAS project, we'll take it one at a time, update and timeline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As often we like to do in these meetings, next we would like to take an opportunity to give a quick update through informational item on some of our critical projects like CAS and P3. Although not a multi-million-dollar projects, through construction at a glance, we will keep you abreast of some of the equally exciting and important initiatives like our repairs to stadium, student services expansion, and allied health simulation lab. To share more information on this, with your permission, I would like to invite and introduce our Director for Facilities Planning and Construction, Mr. Craig Talton.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
We'll start off with the CAS building, the Center of Access and Student Success. As we all know, the CAS building was designed for a multi-purpose building service, one-stop shop for recruitment, admission, financial aid enrollment, as well as registrar, scholarship housing, counseling services, and center for access and resources. We also put the student health services in this building as well. Okay, next one. Our current status with the CAS building is the architect has completed and submitted conceptual designs, advanced schematic designs, and site utilities analysis. That's all been submitted to FAMU staff for review and approval. The construction managers has completed and submitted conceptual and advanced schematic cost estimate for review for FAMU and JRA architects that has been vetted, reviewed, and approved by FAMU staff and JRA architect. Currently, we are in design development. The architect has went through the process of meeting with the user group, making sure that every space is designed to their needs and their desires, and we're passing it off to the construction manager so they could do a cost estimate on that design development that will be due in a couple of weeks. Currently, we'll be moving into our groundbreaking after the board meeting tomorrow, June 8th, starting promptly at 1 p.m. It'll be on site at the site located next to Gaither Gym and between Gibbs Hall and that parking lot. Next.
So,
The next,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
okay. The next steps will be after looking at the PICO funding and how much money that was sitting out. The construction manager and the architect, we all decided to get together and find out the best way to utilize this money, spend this money so we can show the legislature and the board of governors that we're moving forward. So we started to come up with an early site package. That early site package will be delivered on September 15th. Early site package construction will start November 6th. This will give the construction manager a time to start construction without a pause, moving into, we complete 95% construction documents that will be reviewed by the FAMU and FAMU code enforcer, with final construction documents being submitted in December. This would give us an opportunity to start construction and move on to our next phase without causing a pause in construction while legislators start early next year in January, and that'll give us an opportunity to receive more money and keep the project moving forward. Next slide. Any questions on the CAS?
Okay, just if we'll go back to that slide, the stakeholder engagement piece is an important one that we want to point out because we have maintained an ongoing relationship with the Board of Governors staff. They've been very helpful in the process. I would say, too, kudos to the team because once we established our timeline, every milestone this group has met without fail. I hope you've taken the opportunity to look at the biweekly updates because they are doing a wonderful job in keeping this project going forward. Trustee Lawrence.
So give me the briefest capsule here. We got how much so far? How much do we need? And what's the realistic timetable for getting it done?
We receive approximately $16 million. $2.5 million was for design, so we roughly have about $13 million to start off construction with. We need roughly $23 million to finish this project. Realistically, it all depends on the legislature next year and how much progress we show then, so our lobbyists will have to get out and show that we're showing effort to try to get the remaining money to finish this project.
We break ground tomorrow, and that's sort of ceremonial. And then in November, we know exactly what we are doing.
Right. We'll have
when do we actually start building something?
That will be coming in March of next year.
And do we
Wait a minute,
will we begin building before we find out whether we get more money to complete the project?
Well, that's why we're phasing it. We're starting off with an early site package, doing all the civil work first. And then at that time, the construction manager and the architect, we will all look and see what the money we got now, would it be feasible for us to be able to do a shell package? If we have enough money to do a shell package, then we'll go into our next phase and do amendment to the contract to do the exterior shell of the building until we see what type of money we're receiving after that. We can't enter into a full agreement with the CM to do the total project because we don't have all the money. Right. So we got to phase the project based on the funds that we do have available to see how much we can get construction done based on the price.
I find my mind a bit clouded. So the next, is the legislature next year a March session?
January.
January session?
Right.
So so then we go through November, we make a heck of a push in January, actually preceding January. And so by the end of February, in theory, we know whether we got the money?
Well, we're close to that.
You don't know, but in terms of talking about January, I mean, we're going to have to start like probably after this meeting with the whole lobbying piece for dollars for next year. Yeah. But that is the only way, because again, why we were snagged and weren't on the A list, if you will, for the BOG was tied to readiness. Readiness means where are we and have we gotten it to this point? So we have to do these things in order to be in a position for additional funding. Yeah.
Have we moved to the A list? Will we?
They haven't published it yet.
No.
We will be submitting.
Our plan to move
Yeah.
to the-
But
Dr. Robinson, if I
but the thinking here is, we're not, at least at this point, contemplating private funding for this. We're thinking about only public funding for this. And so the next session of the legislature is a good part of the story that tells whether we actually move ahead with this next year. Is that accurate?
whether we're able to advance it to the additional phases,
Right.
I would concur that
Right,
that's what I'd
correct.
offer. Is that
Correct.
correct, Stan?
Correct.
Dr. Robinson, you had a comment?
Sorry, Madam Chair. So we hope that all of this great effort of the team to get this project moving by these dates here with these timelines, that we're in a much better place when it comes to how the BOG perceives this with regard to the A or B list. We think we'll be much more, likely to be on the A list because we have gotten work done, and we've decoupled this project from the private model, the P3 model that we had, so that we could, because it was so cloudy as to how that might go, because this board hadn't even really considered that, at least in an open discussion.
And in my ignorance and naivete, the Board of Governors has a significant role in helping us make the case to the legislature that this is a significantly vital state university initiative.
Yes.
Needs to be
Yes.
fully funded.
Absolutely, we need their advocacy and support.
I think it would help us if we were on their A list.
Exactly.
So I think that's what collectively we need to work toward, getting it on their A list.
Trustee Perry?
Besides working with the Board of Governors to get it on the A-list, it's going to be imperative that during the summer, we get on the radar of the Speaker and the President of the Senate and the Senate Appropriations Chair, along with the House Appropriations Chair. If it's not on their radar, even if we get number one, it's not going to do us any good, and usually, based upon my experience with the judicial system, if you're not on their radar and they're not pushing your project, you're not going to make it.
Okay. Other comments, information item? If not, we're going to shift to our P3 project. And I know that we had engaged or asked for a number of the stakeholders, whether it be the committee, JLL, our consulting group. I will, before we start down the path of this overview, just want to remind everybody that this is a status update. This is not an action item that stops a project. It is a status update to find out where we are. We're going to look at some areas as it relates to timelines, capacity, any of those things that have been found out over the course of the 18 months, 19 months that the group has been meeting, that this board should be mindful of, because, well, for one, we recognize that this is the first time for any of us having been exposed to this type of opportunity. It's uncharted territory, so we want to be supportive of each other and walk out, one, having a stronger awareness. So with that in mind, we're going to ask questions, but the questions are meant to only gain a better awareness and nothing more than that. So AVP Kaplashwari, or who will lead that? Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Trustee. The public-private partnership, as you know, over 18 months ago, we started this process to serve as a catalyst to address some of our critical housing issues, aesthetic concerns, and even make a viable marketplace for long-term sustainability for the university. When we first looked at this, we broke it up in 3 phases. The first phase was the Pentaplex, which started out with Diamond, McGuinn, Cropper Wheatley, Jackson Davis, and Truth Hall. We proposed to do 600-bed dormitories in that location as phase 1. Phase 2 was mixed-use development that will also have approximately 400 residence hall, about 50,000 square feet of mixed-use retail that include retail space, might be a parking garage, also some classroom that was slated to be at the old DRS. We did that to try to tie into the FAMU Way construction and try to gain some of that activity that's going to be going along FAMU Way. So we felt like that would be a perfect site for that project. And the third phase, as we know, our most pressing need, one of our most pressing needs, is the athletic facility. We have a lot of critical issues with the stadium, so we're proposing to do a 35,000 seat stadium, also with a new sports complex that will probably house about a 300 parking garage. And part of our wish list, we put in a hotel, retail, and some student health services, something to generate revenue for the stadium year-round instead of just relying on athletics.
And just before, if I could interject before we leave that slide, what we put in parens and agreed on, if feasible. So we definitely want to make sure that we're saying if feasible.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Starting off with the process, we engaged JLL, who's our consultant on this project, to develop a request for qualifications. During that request for qualifications, we looked at several goals that we were looking for, qualified developers that was able to give us a quality building. Also look at the cost, the schedule, the innovation of the university moving forward. As we submitted that request for qualification, we gave the options to all the potential partners. They could have either submitted on 2 phases, 3 phases, 1 phase, or all the phases. So that option was always on the table from day one to know that they could present on which phase that best fits their partnership expertise. As we moved on, we did our due diligence and feasibility study, and then shortly after that, we got into our ITN attempt to negotiate. To the next slide. During our feasibility study, FAMU looked at several evaluation criteria. We looked at the program plan, we looked at case studies for different marketplaces around the university. We looked at financial and investment analysts, development of cost assumptions, revenue assumptions. We looked at project risk, mitigations, and we also looked at the next step in moving this project forward. JLL was the catalyst in putting this feasibility together and making sure we addressed and looked at all the concerns and all the trends around the campus. Shortly after that, we moved into our student housing demand study. The student housing demand study focused on the future growth of the university. In that student housing demand study, we looked at proposing bringing on 600 new beds at the fall of 2019. 2 years after that, doing another 400 beds, and 2 years after that, doing another 400 beds on campus. The student housing demand study did two-part survey. They did an online survey during the summer, which they got all the emails from all the students, sent out a survey list, had all the students fill out their survey to figure out what needs do they want, how many students do want to stay on campus. If we provide the amenities that they look for off campus, would they mind staying on campus? And then they also came to campus and did a face-to-face one-on-one with the student. They set up in 3 locations across campus. They started off in front of the Student Service Center. Then the next day they moved in front of the Commons building. Then the third day in the general classroom building. And they got feedback from the students. And a lot of students said they would rather stay on campus if the amenities that they look for outside of campus were provided on campus. So we went through that strategic plan and we went through that study and we moved on to the ITN. The ITN, we reached out to several groups. We had on-campus tour. We had presentations by different groups that came in that was shortlisted for this project. We moved forward looking at the different avenues and different needs that the university desire. We also asked them about helping us with some of the other needs financially, not just giving toward housing, but also giving money toward maybe the stadium if we needed that repaired and fixed. So we asked those questions, and that's part of negotiation. So we ended up with 2 companies that was very competitive and came down to this P3 opportunity that we're looking closely at and moving forward with negotiations. Go to the next slide. And at the top, we were looking at separate obligations for the FAMU, student housing being number 1. I know a lot of people had concerns of what are the priorities for FAMU. Student housing is our number 1 priority because we have old buildings not meeting the needs that the students want and also not competitive with other universities. So that's why student housing was put as phase number 1, because it's the most critical on the list. Mixed use came at that time because that was something that the prior administration wanted to give the students some of the amenities and retails on campus to keep them from having to go off campus to get a lot of needs that they need. And then as we know, in recent years, the stadium has been come up with a lot of issues. So that is going to be the second critical project that we need to address on this P3 list. So that will be moved up to phase 2. Go to the next slide. Some of the key components. Because the proposals completely different, FAMU negotiation team reviewed the similar components as it relates to student housing and parking garages. Offering the team reviewed various factors, including unit costs in comparison to determine which firm commenced final negotiation. After 2 deliberation and scoring, we looked at 2 different groups, Construct 2 and Rise. We also vetted the process with JLL to look at what each company can bring to the table. Also, what company could give FAMU not what they need, but also some of the things that FAMU want. And that's what the committee is going through, looking at the best company that can provide FAMU to take care of their needs moving forward at this current time. Along with JLL, we reached out to some of our other universities that did P3 project. In particular, Mr. John Pittman at UCF. He was very critical and very involved in several P3 processes over at UCF. He was involved in their arena P3 project. He was involved in a new football stadium P3 project, their housing project, and as well as their new hospital project. So Mr. Pittman is offered to come in and help the university as being a sister institution, knowing that our needs is the same as every other SUS in the state of Florida, and willing to assist us through this P3 process without no charge to the university. And they will work hand in hand with JLL because Mr. Pittman got a good relationship with Bond Finances, the Board of Governors, understand the state of Florida and the P3 process that been put in place for Florida, along with JLL, which is a national real estate and financial firm that could bring in some of their expertise of what they've seen around the country. So it's almost like we're putting together a nice dream team here to make sure that we push this project through and make sure we look at and cross all our T's, dot all our I's, and give us the best opportunity of getting this P3 approved. To the next slide. What you see up on the screen right now is what were proposed by both development groups. Construct Two proposed to do all 3 phases, the residence hall, mixed-use development, as well as the athletic facility. Rise proposed to do just the dormitory resident hall project. Go ahead. In our next steps, the negotiation committee will review and approve the plan operation and operation budget, ensure operational efficiencies, life cycle savings, and will ensure the project budget and the university best interest that aligns with the financial obligation. Based on negotiations, we will ask that developer to refine and come back with his best and final offer. At this time, the university and the consultant would draft. At that time, they would draft up a contract, a development agreement, operating agreement, etc. Risk trigger matrix will be established, which will give the BOT early indication of possible problems. The president of BOT will review and approve the final contract document, including the substantial changes. Final contract provision will be reviewed and approved by the president and the BOT. Project will be reviewed and approved by the BOG and the Division of Bond Finance. Next slide. And at that time, that concludes my update on the P3 process.
I'll start the conversation again, recognizing that this is uncharted territory for the university as a whole. The committee and group have worked together to get us to this point, but it's also an opportunity for us to, one, reflect on what we've learned, also to look at what questions we may have. We've heard a number of things this morning that talk about the housing that we currently have online, and now the conversation of new housing, of what does that mean for us? What about the retail? Orders of priority are important. So I'll open it up, not to frame it one way or the other. I know that the committee, again, is present along with Attorney Self, who can assist as well because he has this experience both for the university as well as in a prior life. So do we have committee members present? And then we'll start the questions.
Is JLL here?
Is JLL also, are they?
They're on the line.
They're on the
They're on the
line.
line.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
Yes, we are.
Madam Chair?
Okay, Chair Lawson.
Yeah, I think you said it best at the very beginning. We clearly have an interest in this, but I think with having an interest, we also have some reservations, and that's the fear of the unknown. So what my simple question to the group is, do we feel like we have enough expertise on the team, whether it be JLL or a person to be named? Because in my conversations with some other individuals, the feedback that I was given is that they wish they had known some of the things earlier that they learned later in the process, and that they wouldn't have made some of the decisions that they made if they had known those things, because some of those decisions led to increased student fees that they didn't anticipate in order to service the debt. So my quick question to you guys is, because we do want to move forward, so I want to be really clear with that, but do we feel that we have the right level of expertise giving us good advice, whether it be on structure, whether it be on financing, whether it be on, who owns the property over the 35 to 40 years? Do we feel like JLL is doing a good job? Do we feel like we need more people from JLL? So it's more of a question to the team around, do we think we have all the right players at the table to educate us as we move forward?
Chair Lawson, definitely. The reason why JLL did be put on the team, because I spoke to FIU Associate Vice President John Cowell. He stated the same thing. They have a staff that's full of people that did P3 project before, but they got caught up in the same situation where they wish they had the outside help. So he JLL came highly recommended from FIU to make sure that we have somebody on our staff that has the ability and the capability to see one of these projects through, as well as Mr. Pittman. That's why we have the opportunity of having a second person on that have the financial knowledge to be able to assist us through this project, along with the committee. We put together a great committee. We got a lot of experience in their expertise in their areas. We're very knowledgeable. Me, myself, as well as other attorneys, Ms. Fall has went to several P3 conferences. We spoke to several universities, including UCF, USF. We drove down and had a nice meeting with their CFO on the P3 process. Went down to FIU, had a nice conversation with their people, and also went to FAU and talked to them about their P3 process. So we vetted this process very, very carefully. We went through, we made sure we looked at every aspect. That's why JLL is on. They're nationally known for doing these real estate deals and development, and they got a big financial department that's able to assist us and help us get to this finish line. And that's why I asked Mr. Tim Eakins is on the phone, and Mr. Emily Crutch is also on the phone to assist.
And then my other question is, in having not been through this, but does the process allow us flexibility to make changes as we move forward? And what I mean by changes is there's been some discussion that the scope is too large. When you throw in the retail space and other things, you're talking, I don't know, a large amount of money. And there's some discussion that maybe the scope is too large and that we need to narrow down our scope and focus on what we believe is the most critical. As you move through this, do we still have that level of flexibility?
Yes, sir.
To say, retail space was a great idea at the inception, but maybe now it's too much to swallow, or retail space is a really good idea and we can make a lot of money like College Town, so let's go ahead and move forward with it. I just want to make sure we maintain that level of flexibility throughout the project.
And that's a great point. And definitely, yes, we do have that flexibility. We just had a meeting yesterday on that very same topic, looking at the scope, redefining the scope based on what the university need right now. When you looked at it right now, it's basically a wish list. So right now, we're looking back, fine-tuning the scope so we could go into negotiation with the best needs for the university to take care of the university needs first. And if we have an opportunity to get some of our wants, then we'll go ahead and see if we could get those too. But we're looking at scaling back the scope. This project would be done in phases, even though it's show a big master plan, but it would be done in phases. Housing must be done first before we move to the next phase. Unless housing is contingent on the next phase moving forward, then we'll have to put it all together. But yes, we do have that flexibility right now to negotiate and streamline the scope and look realistically what the university needs versus what the university wants.
And the other thing, I know I'm on a soapbox here, but looking at all the financial options, I know our credit rating recently changed in the bond market, but there may be still some other options to leverage the bond market in addition to the private dollars, right, to create somewhat of a bundle. So I just want to make sure that we're looking.
Can you explain that? Can you explain it? Because I don't think we have any bonding capacity right now, so I'm trying to understand that.
Well, I don't know if we do or not. I'm just saying looking at options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now, as I understand it, and typically it's tied to, our ability to service the debt, so the revolving income. So right now, I think we're topped out.
We're topped out.
So, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at all of those options as well, because the one thing about this, and I think why the companies are so interested in, is there's a pretty significant revenue stream with housing. It's almost guaranteed, right? We're not going to go out of business, so there's going to be those millions of dollars flowing through your housing revenue generated to service the debt. But are there other ways to acquire the funds in addition to the private dollars?
Yeah. So we are looking
I don't
at.
know the answer to that, so I'm just saying.
We are looking at
in our
those
considerations.
options, and we're working with Mr. Watkins at the Division of Bond Finance
Okay.
to explore those options and which ones we may be able to take advantage of.
So I guess, and this is my last comment, so my questions are all geared around, are we bringing enough people to the table to learn enough quickly? Because I think, you hear from us, at least hear from me, we do want to try to pursue this as an alternative to acquire these facilities. But from talking to some of the other schools around the system, their feedback has been, ooh, I wish I had known that up front. Then also from talking to the Board of Governors, the feedback is, we had this process, but unfortunately, to date, none of the other universities have followed it to the letter. And, I'm sure there's some good and bad in that. There may be some advantages to not following. There may be some disappointments in not following. So I just want to make sure we learn from their experiences being one of the smaller schools in the SUS as we move forward.
And that's what we're doing, and that's why Mr. Pittman is coming on board, because they've been through it. They been through the negative and the positive, so they want to help us and avoid some of the mistakes they may have made in their previous P3 projects. So yes, we have vetted it, and we can reach out to some of our sister universities that have been through it, and they all are willing to come on board and help us in any way and assist us in any way and making sure that we have a quality product that is FAMU can be proud of, and they will assist us in every way.
And one of the great, and I'll jump in for and acknowledge Interim VP Ford on that, but one of the things, of course, I get a closer look serving as the chair in the back and forth conversation. So this is that opportunity that if we need additional resources, if we don't have the internal capacity, rosy pictures are great. I like them too, but I also like reality best. So what I'm going to do is ask Interim VP Ford if she could also chime in relative to this, to what support is needed.
Sure.
Okay.
And actually, I agree with Mr. Pittman. His recommendation was that we have someone to assist in the debt management process and also overseeing and managing the contract performance. And so I think that's something, that's a missing piece that we have. And so moving forward, that's something that we're going to explore, trying to identify someone that can assist us. And not just contractually, but actually on campus. We actually need someone on campus with P3 expertise, and we really don't have that at this point. So that is the goal moving forward.
Okay, and again, this is family right here, that we're trying to make sure that we understand that as much as we want to push forward, no one's looking to stop that, but we just want to be smart while we're pushing forward, and that we're not walking into something that we could have avoided. Dr. Robbins, I'd welcome your comments if you have any.
Oh, I'm good.
You're good.
Sucked it all in.
Okay, so where we are is what's been pointed out by the team and the staff. The committee is here. I understand that it's a cross-section of individuals across the campus. They'll continue to be engaged. There will be continued dialogue and conversation with this board as we go forward, not to the point of just waiting when the agreement gets approved, but ongoing, because, again, it's new territory, so it's not something that you can't come back and that we can't say that we need to reassess and go in a different direction.
Right.
Are there?
Quick question
Sure,
for you.
absolutely.
Did I understand that JLL is both on the committee and also giving proposals on designs? Is that what I?
No, they're not giving
No.
proposals.
Okay, so who was that second person?
Mr. John Pittman.
John Pittman's an employee.
No,
of
I'm
the
sorry,
business.
the two designs that you showed us there.
Oh, that was Construct 2 and Rise.
Rise.
Those are two
Yeah.
developers that.
Okay. Okay.
The only other thing that I'd point out, and I'll do that openly as well, we have JLL on the line, is making sure that there also is ongoing report that can be shared at a minimum with the committee, noting their progress, their thoughts, their comments. So, Trustee Lawrence.
So instinctively, this feels very compelling to me as a way to get to the future in a way that we might not have the opportunity otherwise. This is an area where, to me, the Board of Governors would be particularly useful. Are they fully apprised of this, know what we're doing? Are we using the expertise they could draw on?
We are working with the team. As a matter of fact, we scheduled just yesterday, and I actually participated in the meetings along with the team. So our next meeting is July 3rd. In addition to the biweekly updates that you all get, I share the same updates with the BOG staff as well to make sure that there's ongoing connection. The same will hold true for Mr. Watkins with finance, bond and finance, and making sure that he's also engaged. So yes, I absolutely concur.
Great.
Okay, I am going to ask if there are no other comments or questions on this that we've
There,
asked.
this is Trustee McCoy.
Oh, Trustee McCoy, absolutely, yes, sir.
Yes, this is a tremendously great discussion. Several folks have mentioned, there are pros and cons to doing this. They've reached out to other schools and other forums to find lessons learned, et cetera. Has anyone dedicated to a piece of paper the pros and cons, and specifically what lessons have been learned, what mistakes have been made? I know someone has that because you said you do, but have you put it on a piece of paper so the rest of us would have a pretty good idea in terms of what to avoid, and in particular the pros and cons and mistakes that have been made?
Absolutely. The staff are shaking in agreement on that. So yes, we will pull that together and provide that to the full board.
Okay, I think that would be extremely helpful. I agree with all the comments that have been made. This is a huge leap. It's also potentially a tremendous opportunity. But with anything, there are two sides to the story, and there are ways to take advantage of mistakes that may have been made by others, so that we not only don't make the same mistakes, but also provide information to others in the SUS who may want to pursue this process, that they can learn from our effort, hopefully, the right things that we do. But if we make a mistake, until we've documented and can pass that on as well. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. So again, appreciate the team's work on this in the committee, and we look forward to future updates on it. I am going to transition.
Can I mention one more thing,
Sure,
just
absolutely.
quickly? You may be aware of it. If you're not, I saw something in the last 3 days. FIU is doing something similar with a hotel, a conference center on its main campus, et cetera. We just ought to know what that's about and how they're doing this and so forth.
Thank you, absolutely. Got that one down on the radar. Okay, because of where we are with timing, University Construction at a glance, we're going to just rely on the presentation materials that the board has. And AVP Ingram, I would ask the same thing. I know that you and your team prepared lots and lots of good information. I encourage everyone to read that section. It's very important, but we're going to transition and move forward on that item as well. Cost savings, because that's come up on more than one, I do want Interim VP Ford to spend a few moments on that. And then the upcoming meeting topics, they are just as printed, upcoming meeting topics, so we will not spend any time on that as well. So just one item, and then we're going to bring it into land. Cost savings, please.
Thanks, Trustee Moore. Briefly, as you can see, we're anticipating a cost savings of $300,000 from a reduction in use of consultants. We're also anticipating by year end, we will have a cost savings of over $13,000 from shared SUS contracts, such as with our office supply vendor, Office Depot. We're continuing to work with our departments regarding the mandatory use of the university's copy center, shipping and printing, to create a cost avoidance, and we should be able to provide a monetary impact by the September meeting. Currently under review are the bulk purchases for IT with Dell, Apple, and HP. The process is scheduled for implementation by July 2017. We will also provide an update at the September meeting. Now, I want to highlight a new item that we added, and it's the virtual payable process. This process will work similar to the P-card process. Rather than pay our vendors by check or EFT, the vendor will be paid via a virtual payables card. In turn, the university will receive annual rebates of approximately $800,000. I repeat, $800,000.
Yes, $800,000. When she said that to me, I said, say that to me one more time on the phone.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we're trying to implement that ASAP. We've already started the meetings, and we have an implementation date by December 2017. So Chair Moore, this concludes our presentation of the information items.
Thank you. And I trust that there are no questions remaining. I appreciate the hearty discussion, and with that, let's move this to a close.
I had a question. Hey, but she trusted you. So we will adjourn for lunch, and we will return at 1:45 for strategic planning.